We'll be talking about virtual design and construction, as well as building information modeling BIM in the next series of lectures. I'll be covering with you the VDC implementation services, VDC support services, and VDC production services. And then we will go into the model management, as well as identify what are the different levels of development of a BIM model. We will also discuss the BIM project execution plan, the BIM project execution planning procedure, and I will discuss a bit about the guidelines as per the Singapore's requirements. We will look into the workflow of BIM implementation for different type of projects, especially for the design and build projects, as well as the more traditional design, bid, build projects. And we will end this series of lectures by talking about the different types of professionals that are working in this particular subsector of the built environment. We call it the BIM professionals. So VDC, as we know it, can be utilized across the project delivery life cycle, all the way from design to fabrication to construction, and also for facility management purposes. But one thing we should take note of is that when we are dealing with VDC, when it comes to implementation, it should provide a change in the whole workflow. Because if we are following the traditional processes, and if at the same time we are also carrying out VDC process, it will not be so optimum, because you are already doing something in the traditional manner, and then you want to implement a new workflow. That will not be able to give you the full advantages of VDC. Which is why when VDC comes in, it requires restructuring of the organizational workflow that it is followed by for creating the information for the projects. So all the things needs to be restructured as for when the project starts implementing the VDC services. During the course of VDC, there will be multiple building information models, or BIM models that we call it, that will be produced by different parties during different stages of the project. And the different parties could produce the BIM models on different software platforms. For example, during the architectural design stage, there could be software like Autodesk Revit, or Graphisoft is another software for this architectural design. During the construction stage, again, Revit can be used, but in addition to Revit for logistic planning, for model checking, for coordination, they could be using software like Autodesk Navisworks or Synchro, or any of these other types of platforms. For fabrication, they could be using Tekla Structures or Nemetschek. This leads to a creation of multiple different information models across the value chain. So in order to deliver a VDC project successfully, there should be sufficient in-house expertise. And this expertise is produced by a team of BIM professionals, which includes the BIM managers, the BIM coordinators, the BIM modelers. They are able to create the model, check the model, and finally deliver the model according to the design intent. When we talk about VDC services, we are talking about three areas where VDC can offer the benefits to the stakeholders. They are in the area of implementation services, support services, and production services. Implementation services includes things like consulting, training the project team on integration of VDC into a project's design through the construction workflow, and the writing of VDC specifications and implementation plan, as well as maintaining the overall quality of the model. We will be spending quite a bit of time talking about VDC implementation services in the next few slides of this lecture. The next type of VDC services is known as support services. So support services includes things like using the model to solve a specific project issue which could have emerged during the course of design or construction in relation to risks, claims, training, and quality. The third type of VDC services is known as the production services, and there are lots of production services that VDC can offer. Production services is all about creating BIM deliverables, and the outputs from this type of specialized BIM models that are produced during the different stages by the different parties across the whole project value chain. A typical project life cycle consists of the following phases that you can see on the screen here. It starts with the feasibility or the conceptualizing phase, and then flows down to the design phase and goes to procurement, pre-construction, finally the construction phase, and when the project is completed, it is then handed over to the end user and we go into the operation phase, and finally when the project is decommissioned or demolished, it goes into the decommissioning phase. During the different phases of the projects, there are multiple types of BIM models which are produced across the value chain. For example, this design model in an ideal scenario is supposed to start evolving right from the conceptualization or the feasibility studies stage, and it proceeds and evolves until the project is completed and handed over to the owner. For this design model, the contractor will extract something we know as construction management or VDC model, which is then utilized during the construction stages. But this particular construction management and VDC model can only start during the detailed design stage, where the coordinated information becomes more available. The construction management or VDC model then becomes handed over to the end user when the project is completed, and that model becomes what we call the handover model or as-built models. So you can see that during the different phases of the project, there are many types of BIM models that are available. The construction management and VDC models can include 3D model, information model. It could include visualization models, coordination models, models for costing and quantification, 4D models, logistics models, or tracking models. We have previously mentioned that there are three different areas of VDC services. You have the VDC implementation services, the VDC production services, and the VDC support services. So these are the various activities or the available attributes, okay, that are found, okay, under the three areas, okay, of VDC key services, which can mainly be parked under the different types of BIM models for the stakeholders to use throughout the different phases of the project. I'll be going into more detail on the different these key services in the next few slides. For VDC implementation services, typically they will include the VDC specifications, VDC implementation plan, and VDC training. These three particular types of services will be applicable throughout the usage of the different models that is used by the different stakeholders. That's why it's parked under this area here in the diagram. In terms of VDC support services, typically we will be thinking about providing for worker training, okay, and safety training, as well as construction quality assurance, which is applicable throughout all the different models that will be used by the different stakeholders. In addition, under the 4D model, we can also look at providing risk support as well as claim analysis and mitigation. The VDC production services, and under the VDC production services, you can see these are the suites of services that is available to allow the different models to be used more effectively by the different stakeholders. We'll be going through all these different types of production services in more detail in the next few slides. Let's discuss in detail VDC implementation services, which covers VDC specifications, VDC implementation planning, as well as VDC training. VDC specifications is critical because these specifications provide a rulebook for the whole project. They set up the expectations and outline how the work should be performed. The specification states what the information model should include and what level of details from the early design right down to the facility's final operation. It should also reference the related global standard for the level of module development, for example, the NBIM standards or the LOD specifications, which we will be talking about in the future series of lectures. And the contracting bids are submitted based on provided specifications. These are some of the essential standards, okay, for the information model to include. We will include, for example, the naming conventions, the file structures, the software workflows, the definition of the various components in the BIM model, how complete the model should be at different phases of the development, and what sort of data output should be given out from each one of the models. The next part will be the implementation planning. The VDC specification requires the team members to produce a VDC implementation plan. And the plan is typically the responsibility of three parties: the design team, the contractor, the VDC consultants. And this implementation plan will answer all the requirements of the VDC specifications. It is essential for a successful integration of VDC. It outlines in detail how the VDC processes will be implemented. Typically, the plan will include the project team structures, 3D model standards with naming conventions, the file organizations, the software workflows, the definition of the components, how complete the different models should be, and the data output definitions. Not all team members will be very conversant or familiar with the different digital tools that is needed in a VDC-enabled project. Therefore, VDC training is vital because we need to make sure that the necessary and essential information that is needed to allow VDC to take place is trained, okay, and everybody knows how to use it. So training also needs to be assessed, as in different members may understand how to use different tools at different levels. And typically we try not to outsource the training, and we have in-house training to encourage teamwork and create a spirit of team togetherness when we are doing VDC-enabled training projects.